Fatalo fatu Amerika Samoa lau whaafonga mai. A me se so Samoa o lo o mai mo mai so staffa langi. O le whaapoponga nei o le Procurement a le tala ta ui mo le nei fo i vai aso a wālau mai mo mai. Fatalo fatu ai taftolo le whainga malo tuina manu ai le fio lau fionga le kovana ma le lutena kovana ma lau lua kapeneta. Le fio le fono faitu la fono i mau tai lua i le lau fionga le presidente. Ia maise o le mamalu o sentoa o i tu malo te tasi. Ai le ngata i leo lau fionga le fonga ftalai, sui fonga ftalai, ia maise o le mamalu o faipule filfilia mai tu malo o whapalota te tasi. Fatalofa atu fo'i lau fionga i le whamsin siri le ala i aloa Michael Cruse, sui whamsin siri ai maise o li o le whamsinonga. O le taftolu ta otolana, o le whainga malo tutuila mamanua, malo o sui fua. Fatalofa atu fo'i le tātou malolo to i fale le fio lau fionga le malo le fale fai vai, Alex Cardinate, ai le ngata i lea, o le sui fai lau tusi, ia mare mamalu o ko vana o whāle lima, o wharopenga mali mautofi, o le tāwhatolu, o le whainga malo ta otole nā, o lau whainga malo loto i fale, Amerika Samoa. Fatalofa atu i lau whainga luanga tofi e le tua i whata whai taulanga i fia, soifua manuia malo le folau whaafutai le talo. Ta mamtina matua tupulanga talvo o lava i whana witi mātou te avatu le aol whatalofa le tātou Procurement e le nei fiafi. O nisi nei o sa ili ilinga sa whea ngai ma le tala le tau i pei lava o le mātou whailo atu i nisi o Procurement utua nai. E tele a mātou suenga, mo iei nisi o au nanga mamaenga a social issues o o tatai iei le talanoa ale atunuu i so stemi wa mawhai o na mātou o iei mawhai eia mātou sa ili linga. O stasi o sa ili linga, o lo mātou ngā lue, ma sa mātou ngā lue ai, ma o lo whaau au pea o na mātou ngā lue ai. O le tele o issues po o mata upu o lo tūla i mai, i le Falema'I e tasi ale atunuu le LBJ. O telefo ilan whatalu noanga o mai e o na mātou whaia. Mai fōringa mai i le ao te lenga o tala noanga ia o lo mātou whaia. Ma tangata sa aveam board members, tangata sa aveam tangata whainga luenga le LBJ, a u wha malolo ina. Tangata o lo ngā lulu e pēl, teimi nei a o lo mata pēa i nisio activity le o tala whea ngai malo tu la fono. O mawhai o na whaasoa mai. Mai fōringa mai la lātou whaasoa. O loo alutasi lava le whaasea. O le mafua anga po le pongai o nei mea uma. Mea o loo afua ai, nei whaai unga uma i te tonu o le matanga luenga, po le matanga luenga o le Falema'I, o le LBJ. E mafua mai le board po le komiti whaafoi o le Falema'I. Whamaru atu ia i lātou o loo ngā lue le board. O no le fo i o loo tau mwhai atu fso o ta inga. Ia mau tō fionga. E tātou te tala no mwhaasoa ai. A o le tūlare nei. Na hau i eile mātou sa ili ringa. Ma o le a whaafonga i se tasi o whatala noanga. Ai tātou te le i o le loto o le mataupu. O le ase o tātou matamata. Pe whape i le whaatūlanga ina o le whaatamo e ina o le manota ngasangase. Mana mauala sa mātou awanoa. E tala no ai ma le fionga di CEO o le LBJ, o lo iei temi nei, le sunga ia Scott Anesi. O si mai al mai moa, o se vaenga le nei o le whatalutala noa. O le whatalufatu le tātou tunu, whafo mai Amerika Samoa le vaenga o le awauli. Mo fo le nei awa noa e whero e fo i ma le fionga i le CEO o le tātou mo tangasngase le LBJ, le sunga ia Scott Anesi. O ia leo o ia taua veina fo ile nei nu foa. Pea on whalau lo atu. Tele nisi o whaasea ma whawhateata mai fo i sa wha leo e nisi o pisinisi, company. Ia, mai se lau fo i lātou o lo o ia ilo lātou whaangau le mali. I nisi o fuafuanga sa wha le tonu ai le teitai ngal mautangas ngase. Mai se lau mali board. Sa tau mwhai tātou talutala ta ui e sota i atu i le tātou board ia e peitai ia ua le mwhai o na mōsa ava noa maltete whono manisi o le komiti whafoi ia a ua whaeroa mai e whai le mātou sota inga mansunga i Ascara Nesi o le nei la so i wha tei te lero fionga si o so le mo le mo lo wa noa O te lor te leo mea la usiri ai e le o I lalo la jurisdiction. E le o te levo I so sila fia. Ai, o le a tau mwhai pea. E a mata atua I le whataru no I nao le nei kua fuanga. E loa e le taltala le taui, malang polkalana. E iai le procurement process. E whaatino ai le tau fui na o ngā wenga. Mai o le tele o nisi o kamai company whawhale le atu. O la tau whisinia le vaenga na. E whaianga e whasavani a le tatou mai moanga. O le ale whaatinonga o le whaamai mo.
Ia, whawhakai fui ro a whionga le moa furingi a mua whaasoa I whaamalamlama fo I na tunu uawa I a procurement. Ia ma projects ia o le fia whai. Se ka ora I kua I le akaula le project, the concept first.
Yes.
Whai mua la le scope of work. Sa I la I la un singia lo iai I mako vahenga I singia lo iai. Lo iai fo I mako procurement. So a whapea la o la ua mafo whaua pe whai se ka ko whale fo. Po se ward. Whakai ka inga la po se ward fo. Whi mo the concept idea. Tau la I o le plan na, whai mo le scope of work. O risi la la aima mea na o le ka o le IGC, it's a cost. Fua la, e iai la I a company fafo, e iai fo ma usi ia ro I iai whamai. E sa ili la, po le aimo me la, what's the true cost? E whai ni le scope of work la le. E umaronga mai ia li bookinga, o whai la ia le bid for maka la le bid process.
So lo
request ia tau. Whai loa ia whafo whangara e le upo ua masangi la tunu ua e whasala me le pepa, whasala fo isi ia vaena.
E whasala wa o tau le pepa po o.
So, o le mea lai whaunga e mato, we have a agreement with outlets. So what we do is we do a distribution list.
Okay.
So when we do the distribution list, then it goes out to several outlets on the distribution.
Media outlets.
Yes, sir. On the distribution. Well, then, what we do is e sala ia projects. O isi e whasala o le sfuli maaso. O isi whasala o tolu sfulu aso. So ia procurement policies, procedures, you know, whamala nama fo I iai fo ia project a le procurement o tato malo. E vai e sala ia aso whasala au isi. So o mea umanga e whakaura le project, the need on the project. So e rua na vaenga e whainga whai. O le vaenga rongo or the sole source. Now the sole source also has a criteria. There's certain criteria that will meet if I use sole source, and the biggest one is emergency need.
Okay.
And
what are you determining on sole source?
So o mako for you, it's the board. So we'll get to the board the end process on that. But there are some projects, let's say after disasters. Yeah, like company and whainga, especially expertise, but sa whaangana le sole source. Say whaangana emergency. So whaangana le bid process o le request for proposals. O lo whaanga fo ia isi ia company and the request for qualifications. Ia ngai se ngā o ranko rua la. Faitioga le pre-bid meeting. So one of the criteria for the proposals is ka e attend la le fono le the pre-bid meeting are eligible to apply in the bid la. So then they have the meeting and they set meetings for questions.
RFP.
Yeah.
I respond mai to a fitu. I piki nga o le ko lima.
A whapera rau a lakua company ra o ke wa ai aku ia e whaira le aso rua I le se furu tae I le pre-bid meeting. Ia sa ua o kankana I o lo
le saingi
o le pūla lea
mandatory pre-bid.
E mu wakula ia o vagani the next stage. Ia o lisi criteria for o le deadline o le bid, o le deadline. it's sala for but it's all in the RFP. You know, I don't want to say lehalea because some bids are different. Some RFPs are different depending on, but all this question, you see for umare fiafi, you see there or the deadline or the kaya so on process or from concept the bid. So when the bid closes, the procurement side, if I like or the commercial review, the bid package. The commercial review, if I for the consultant specialist, Baco if I engineer or in Macanga, my engineer for from the public, engineer for my FAFO. Find the technical review. Find the technical review, a commercial review. It's a ranking scoring of that. I might not the scoring ranking on the technical review. I might the review the commercial review. Find the form of the board.
Le board le talmoika
or the hospital board.
Hospital board, I fair le SCP. Source evaluation. Source evaluation
or the process the commercial review, money evaluation.
Okay.
Or the process if I my review board.
So the SCP.
Yeah. But it's our own internal processes. So my law, I've the board. So go the commercial review, go the technical review. If you got the board. Polale bid le mahu. E umalonga fai feeding on the board. Na koe wakura le procurement. E fai loa aku ko kalaki ia po ia no maro po ia na mo ai na.
City ga le pick up up there boy. E yesa malo si ang review ye le ka o SCP. E recommend the board the company e fai nga.
Yeah. E le technical review. For your commercial review. So, depending on the review, or a review what I will see I review for your commercial review. If I for your bid, you bid within the threshold. So, it's set for your threshold, but as I mentioned before, it's project by project. Le formula for the pre-bid, but once those reviews go to the board, the board
Depending on the review the board, hospital board. E yes identify a company or le submit for more review board.
Yeah, so it goes to the board of directors. And there's bidder 1, bidder 2, bidder 3.
And then naming a more company.
Yeah, it's the 4 year le bidder numbers in the commercial review, except for the bidder numbers on the technical review. So se
numbers.
It's just numbers. From what I've seen, it's still so. Or the CEO is not involved in the process. So. Some of the board meetings that were reviewed, and some not, but this is a checks and balance system so that procurement, finance, all of these are doing separate work. Now, the board, but ultimately it's the board's decision to pick the contract.
No, we're going to have a review on commercial side, Osione. I saw the review on Resi Vaena or Sim. I might be the LBJ board if I made a pole. I haven't had when I shucks.
Yeah. So, or it's how more in officity that, yeah. So I think or the because there's questions. If I go like officity or I the commercial review. Pe fia lase mea lo pakeki, ngā whaida i le threshold o le kupe. Ngā ngā whaai o isi vaenga, if I efesi more company, is it a local company or have they experience in the field la lea? And then on the engineering side, projects like have they done the same type of projects before or questions o fili la lako deliberations umi deliberations each time ke wapiki oela runga board ke wapiki o bidder two o ngā rewa sau le review o CEO o ru o aula ia o rewa o ke mafo fau o le rua la technical lele amakoi Mau runga na kau. Au risi vaenga pe kau le lei, pe maybe ranked third i le lisi lea. Ai laua maangai le kau. Ia au ke awai ia. Ko e whai ko deliberate, piki roe la kopa la le pere. E umaronga fili e la kou ia le pere la lea. A wako roli ngu mena le pere i ranga ia le procurement se e amukanga so ka ia company ia whai whokara.
So, o lava la fuanga le mea manatu e CEO e awenga ia siaks. Po le manatu fo i le SEP. Ta whai ngō i le SEP in pōlia. Le whai le review. Po la lava la tau manatu o siaki e le lei manga waa. E whai ngā wenga. A whina ngano le board a LBJ e a fo i e ave i asione. Ono no wina e fuki e lava i le board at LBJ le Faitioga.
Yeah. So another thing that this is a regulatory board.
Yes.
So that they have three main functions aside from the policies procedure. But the three main functions here, the first one are the pakeki. They have financial control. The pasia mo the board the pakeki the proposal. Ko da ye fono ma o longo mo or a credential. Then I come like se for ma I don't the board. If I need credentialing on the medical.
How many doctors on the board so far?
One. The chairman is he's a physician.
The newly elected chairman, Dr. Pedro.
Is contracts. So on the process but also a for elako and fili for elako is sole source. Anga whapera o le manga ora ko I le kampania le fan. The board can also find sole source for the company. Yes, sir. But those are the three main functions. So if I need a phone, if I need commercial review, if I need technical review, and then I don't see any of these reviews. So and then I find because reviews for the bid package. So if I and for me personally, I don't want to make a recommendation when I don't know all the information. So but then
so you don't connect with your people at the back.
Oh, that's part of the process. That's part of our internal protocols and process. So that the procurement process runs independent. The engineering process and the technical runs independent. And then it comes here. That the CEO comes in, which is after the fact. Gave me the award. So then now I have to work with the companies on moving the project forward. So the operations side is largely separated from this. But work on the paperwork, the details, the payment schedules.
Before the notice of to proceed.
Yes, sir.
It is widely understood that LBJ's procurement division follows a structured bidding process. Can you walk us through what the process entails from start to finish? No, for the English, for the benefit of our English viewers.
I apologize. I think that first answer was all English. That was all English. So I apologize to the Samoan audience because I think I answered that more in English than Samoan, but it all starts off with an idea or a concept of a project. Then it turns into a scope of work, feasibility study, and there's a engineering team there. Then from there, it goes to, they call it an IGCE, but it's a cost estimate. It's a cost estimate of how much is that. Then finance either already has a budget or they try and find money to see how much project is. Then it goes for bid. So the bidding process starts largely with an RFP, and then there's a pre-bid meeting, which is where all of those that are interested in bidding attend. So only those that are in the pre-bid meeting are then eligible. There's a criteria for procurement. But the whole process goes to the end of the bid. Then the bid goes for a commercial review with the procurement. And there's policies, procedures in place for that. We use both in-house and external partners. Then it goes to a technical review. After the technical review is done, then we use, again, in-house engineers, external, depending on the project. Some projects are small and they need, let's say, it's a water project.
Yeah.
So they'll need a technical expert for, so it depends. We have several contractors that are on contract for that. So then the commercial review is then presented to the board of directors, and the technical review is presented to the board of directors. The board of directors then can ask questions to the representative of each board. And then after that is ceased, the board of directors.
So the SEP board appears before the LBJ board in order for them to answer questions.
Right. So, I mean, I know on the governmental side, there's a SEB. On the private sector side, there's other versions of it. But this is our internal process. So they present the review, and then the board of directors deliberates and selects the contractor.
Is this process including timelines, evaluation criteria, and award procedures apply equally and transparently to all vendors, both local and outside?
Yes. So all of the RFPs that are delivered, they all have the same criteria that's in them. So I think the right answer is it's project specific, but each project is applied across the board to those that are bidding me. Yes, sir.
Ilo tulanga fa CEO o Falema'I. O le aso la mona o sa o le process le o lo whatinoi me o mane e pei o na mamuri mutai e Falema'I le tuina atu o tau fonga ia male tuina atu fo o ngā runga i company man.
Yeah, ia la ngonga. Na mawhainga ruenga ma le fionga le o le wa whaatonu le procurement ngai o friendly tu. Le tene i o process ia. Na whainga ruenga ia le fionga o Fred, whapte ngā fo I ma le procurement officer le LPJ. Ma external consults. E kusi rai la ko ia policies and procedures like that. And those are the policies and procedures or for giving me, and it's one that I think it's very efficient, but it also has a lot of fail safes go komo ni ki wa fale komo sin.
So te lera ngā renga e te agreeba whai atu te lera ngā renga na tapena e Fred ai le ia o ese mara LBJ.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a le renga te le fo inga renga a consultant ki ngā wha ngā mai. E kusi ai rā kou ma whani rā kou ia protocols and procedures. So, e saua o ko kongo a rongo o mga ko ia protocols and procedures. And of course, e fo I've only been in office 7 months now. So, o le kele o projects here, na sa le board na o whatua e la ko here the process o mama ko.
This consultancy talking about our local or off-island consultants?
Both. So,
How many?
well,
If you don't mind.
it depends on what the division is. O vanga ye o engineering, okay, dore rua ye kukalake a vanga nga loko, e rua fui kukalake fafu. O le procurement e gai fui le la ko I vanga ye o kukalake mai e whai e protocols. There was a firm that na whao ngā karua.
What is the difference between the regulatory board of LBJ and other board like ASPA board, ASTACA board? Can you walk us through?
Well, I think I don't know the bylaws and that of the regulatory boards. I know some are advisory boards, which deal mainly with policies, procedures. But a regulatory board, such as for the authority here,
LBJ
does both. Does both policies and procedures, but also does operational support or intervention. So that's one of the biggest distinctions, is that the board has the ability to evaluate certain operational things, and one of the most important, as I mentioned, is the contracts.
When a bid raises questions or appears to require further evaluation, what are the internal procedures are in place to ensure that analysis is objective and adheres strictly to procurement policy in LBJ?
Oh, that's a good question. So let's go to maybe the first part of the question. Is if there's issues with the bid.
Yeah.
So then there's a bid evaluation process. A bid evaluation process, again, depending on the project, but the main point is, pre-bid, if there's any changes, then it's communicated directly. Or number two option, or bid. So let's say there's a issue with the bid, or maybe there's issue with the process. Then sometimes you'll see a notice of cancellation or a notice of change, the language of the bid, or something.
Or a notice of rebid.
Or a notice of rebid, yeah. Or a notice of change. A notice of change, extend. Or the extension, which happens sometimes where the contractors come to a consensus. Because, it kind of go for that, or a request where you're like, the extension, or vice versa. So then that's communicated, but it's all through the procurement. So we have a contract specialist, or communication. So if there is a complaint, we'll get to the second part, is if there's a complaint or if there is an issue with the contractors, then there's a process to go through the contract specialists, and then it goes up to the procurement and the engineering. If it's a technical question, then there's a response. If they have a question, maybe to make their bid better or to help them out in the future. There's a response line, le criteria or a commercial side, back and forth.
So when a company or bidder file a grievance for any project, where is that? Which part of the operation address?
So if it's
where can a bidder address the
yeah? So first step is definitely the contract specialist. So at every pre-bid meeting, the representatives from LBJ that always host the meetings, but also the contract specialists at procurement, and they're the frontline communications. Then depending on what the complaint is. So it can be either a technical complaint or a review complaint, which then will get solved through the committee. But then if it's a procedural complaint, then it will go up to the board of directors. So it all depends por la complaint.
From multiple sources, CEO, I've been told that most recent bidding round was not conducted fairly. and that transparency was severely lacking. Many vendors have expressed clear disappointment on growing sense that LBJ is regressing to practices that discourages open competition. What is your response to these claims?
I think it's a serious concern. For me, I would suggest evaluating which specific complaints would it be. Would it be an evaluation complaint? Would it be a process complaint, right? Would it also be a selection complaint? If it is a procedural complaint or a review complaint, I would welcome them to come and talk to me, and because procurement, engineering, those divisions fall under the CEO's office, and I would be happy to work with them on whatever individual complaint is. However, if it's a selection complaint, then again, I would encourage them.
It's beyond your control.
Well, and I would encourage them to send the complaint to the board of directors.
Have you received any complaints lately?
No, sir. We haven't. We have received some emails specifically to, and they have largely been dealt with at the review area, the technical side. So we have complaints of that nature, but we haven't received a formal complaint for the selection. Yes, sir. So we have had some that had very valid complaints in terms of the procedure, meaning tight deadlines or the RFP process and things like that. But the selection is one. And again, I encourage, if you have complaints, sending emails to staff or something, that's one step, but formalize it, right? Write the letter, bring it into my office. Yeah, absolutely. And then the only way we're going to show the process, and as you mentioned, there's a lot of disappointments. We definitely want to make sure that we're entertaining them, but again, we can't act on something when it's just maybe a phone call or something. Please, I encourage the people, if there are complaints, formalize a letter, drop it off to my office, and
phone the office and talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely they can. But I feel that there have been several contractors that have done that, and we can work it out over the phone. But I mean, just looking at the question, that's a very strong statement, right? To say that LBJ is lacking transparency and offering. This sounds like a step above that. Usually when I get a call or an email or the staff does, we're kind of able to work through it. But I mean, I think if it's to the extent that it is something that really needs to, then I would do that over the phone too. Some issues that would call, I would be happy to talk to them. And I would encourage them over the phone too that, I feel if this is a serious issue, please attention the chairman of the board and CC myself in the letter, and we'll go through the due process.
Since you became the CEO of LBJ, do you have any data or example where grievances actually resulted in corrective actions or reversals?
There is data. Are we talking specifically on contracts, or
Yes.
are we talking about
contracts, both contracts and employment?
Yeah. So there's a compliance team that runs independent investigations. So there's two processes. Let's say there's a decision that is made by the CEO, and a lot of these are personnel issues. If there is a grievance on the party, then what they can do is they can then appeal. Now it goes through a compliance. So there's what's called an incident report. There's paperwork, but there's a division that deals with compliance. And it is the compliance job to work with the parties to come up with either a corrective action or an amicable solution. And the compliance office is also the ones that work with legal. So if it's a legal matter, etc. So there is a compliance office. is a process for any grievance, whether it just be a disgruntled community member, a bad experience, a employment, or all the way up to something like this. There's a grievance committee. There's also a process, but I can't share specific examples due to the sensitive nature.
What does LBJ guard against internal or external influences, such as favoritism, politics, or personal relationship, that will compromise the fairness of a bid evaluation project or process?
Another great question. It just goes back to, as we mentioned before, is policies and procedures. You know, one is to have really great policies and procedures, but it's a totally different thing to abide by that. So we also need compliance. But one of the issues with compliance is when you have enforcement, it's hard to enforce without penalty.
Yeah.
So I feel that, and that's something that we put in place, not just with procurement, but also across the board. Sometimes we have outdated bylaws, we have outdated policies and procedures, and some of them don't have much penalty. So we
Do you have any plans as CEO to revisit those?
Absolutely, and we've already started, especially with HR, human resource, because they set the tone largely for that. But we do have a committee that works specifically with the board of directors to address policies and procedures. But one of the biggest things that we're trying to do now is to put the enforcement component in them.
So, was there any time a politician called you for favors
Well,
to award them or direct, in order for you to direct somebody else to award a
as
contract?
far as contracting and as far as hiring, all of that, you know, I get calls all the time. You know,
From politicians?
right. Well, from everybody. I got about 5 from you. Maybe even 7. If you're asking if anyone has overtly come out and say, please hire this and that, no. But you do get the kind of gist of the conversation. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm not going to read between the lines and get the gist, but that happens several times, and it's happened to where, you know, part of the community has also asked me about it, and you know, bottom line is, I feel a lot of questions, but I do respect the leadership in the government, not only just on the formal side, but also in the ASG side, because there's guidances, and there's also other things that they provide to me. But they also know that there's a fine line between, you know, that. And so I appreciate that. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I think maybe now I'm just new and nobody's really pushing the button. But I do get calls, and, you know, most of it is to ask how I'm doing, or, you know, so-and-so and that. So we'll see. I hope they don't start calling me now for that. But I do have some job announcements that are coming out. So if you would like employment or know somebody, I will always entertain interest.
There's lots of social media posts and gossips, you know, I can say gossips, that alleging one of board members keep hiring of people he knows or his family members, and gave favoritism decisions on contracts. Have you aware of that?
I haven't received any formal complaints. Also, since I've been in office, I believe I've only been a part of maybe a few hirings so far. Most of the bulk of my hiring is now. I've got the position for HR director that we're interviewing. As far as direct intervention from a board member and hiring, and I'm not aware of it, but that's not to say that, you know, there's no truth to that. But I would implore the people, if you have any sufficient evidence, or even if you want to send it anonymously, but I would definitely like to look into that and to make sure. One of the things that we want to make sure that we provide to the people is that, not only is LBJ under new leadership, but I'm also finding my way in how working with the board, working with the existing, but again, that's another major concern. I haven't personally seen any misconduct, but like I said, I implore people to please be in contact, I'm at the office, and you can contact me, or like I said, if you want to send it, you can send it as email as an anonymous message.
One last question. Have you met with the Pula and Pulu administration, and what are plans in place to make sure LBJ is in line to provide the healthcare, to continue to provide the healthcare services for American Samoa and its people? I know they gave you their blessings.
That's another really good question. The governor himself, as well as the lieutenant governor, have visited multiple times.
Pulu.
Pulu. So Honorable Governor Pula, as well as Honorable Lieutenant Governor Pulu, have visited multiple times and have shared their concerns. I had the opportunity to sit down with them and share the vision. But one of the aspects that we're mainly focusing on right now is we're not trying to do a total overhaul. What the hospital needs, and we all agree on, is just competency and stability. Go back to the basics. It's hard to develop projects when the paint's falling and, the roof's leaking. So it's going back to the basics first. First and foremost is we want to create an environment that's a quality environment. So, we put new chairs in here. We got new dialysis chairs. We're trying to make renovations in there. So first and foremost is back to the basics. Clean facilities, quality space, and then take care of the personnel, right? Personnel is your number one commodity. That's my number one asset is my staff. Make sure that they're well paid for, and then discuss the vision. So the vision of the PNP campaign, which is one to change the landscape, is one that I feel it's very ambitious, and it's something that's really going to change the landscape for the long term. And it starts with the ARPA projects. LBJ, right now, we have 13 projects locked in with a 14th that's going to be coming. That's a major landscape shift. We're getting a new ICU ER, a new parking garage, a new central plant, new wiring, new water tank, new water storage, a new roof. I mean, there's so many projects. It's a very ambitious plan, but it's much needed. This hospital hasn't really had new buildings go up, aside from the new OR, since 1968. And I am in full support of this administration's number one concern to try to change the landscape and to provide quality of LBJ. Yeah. So their vision it's a great vision. I really appreciate the support from the current administration. I also appreciate the support from previous and other administrations. It's a small island. We're all working together. But I really appreciate the vision of the new administration and the support for us to get it done.
Au mātou iei ma le sunga ia Scott a nesi nei whaatalanoanga. O stasi o tala sa hao o mai il tala o ta ui. O loo iei le fuafuanga le Falema'I o le relocate ia nisi o ofisa o le mautangase po le LPJ a ngai i le AOP i tafuna. O le AOP mo le silfia, o le mautalea o loo i lalo, o le maumia sa o loto, e le sunga i le li whaipi nisi. Ia papali'i, lauli i alofa, ai maise o le whiunga i a leota masi o lato a inga, ma le company le Paramount Builders. Ina ua fisiringia e le tala ta ui se fina ngalo le whiunga le whaatonu, pe moni o lo o iai se fuafuanga whaapea, a le LBJ e relocate mai ei ofisa i le whalefou lea o le sunga ia pari i lauri elofa o lan tali lentu ina mai i le tala taui.
As a CEO, is it true you are planning to move LBJ to Alofa office building in Tafuna?
Another good question. So, yes, we're planning to move. So, but not all of LBJ. I think the common misconception, and I'm glad you brought this up, because I've been fielding calls all day about this. Certain politicians are very interested in this as well.
Yeah.
But so this is the idea. We've got 13 projects. The back of the LBJ side that has compliance, finance, we're building a garage to address our immediate parking issues. But that means there's going to be a lot of displacement of employees. And so we're exploring buildings. We've looked at buildings on the...
And all these projects are under BNP right now?
These projects are ARPA projects?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. All of these are brand new projects for the hospital.
The 3-story
yes, sir.
car park?
Yeah, 3-story car park is part of that. So one is we need to move people. Now, I won't say the exact vendors that we've gone to, but we have explored other areas. We've also explored partnering with DOH, which we're in discussions with for some space across the street. We're also evaluating other spaces with DOC. So thank you to DOC and DOH for their contribution. We're also looking for wide amounts of square footage, because we're going to need storage for a lot of the medical equipment. The houses that are currently being built require a massive amount of equipment, as you can imagine, ventilators, even the new MRI system. There's a lot of equipment that's coming. And because we're behind schedule, the ARPA project, the funds expire next year, December.
Yes,
so we need space to order all of that equipment and put them in there. So that was one of the buildings that's one of the buildings that we're looking at. It is a very large building, and the square footage that we're looking for is one that can be accommodated there. But I will also say that we are in discussions with that building, but we're also in discussions with several other spaces. So if you have commercial space, please let our procurement specialists know, and we'll be happy to visit. There are certain requirements, building requirements that we have. We also are limited in our funding. So it's a very it's a short-term lease. We are kind of limited in our funding, but we are happy to explore. One of the reasons that we are evaluating the Tafuna area is, as I mentioned before, we're partnering with DOH. The clinic is close by. There's also other things that we're looking at. But yeah, that's one of the buildings. The AOP bill. I didn't realize it was called the AOP. We just had this conversation before the live. But yes, that's one of the buildings that we're exploring now. And we'll make an official announcement when the buildings move. It's largely going to be supplies and admin, and then we'll make explorations.
So the timeline is, when are you moving part of LBJ to AOB or any other building?
Yeah,
around the territory is not.
Well, it's all dependent on two things. One is, we've already put the project, the bid closed on the parking garage, and we're in consultation with DOC. There's PNRS. There's a lot of processes that have to take place before we can actually do the specific construction. So depending on when we can lock in those dates will then depend how the people that are currently in those buildings need to move out. So what we'd like is a 2 to 3 week lead time to be able to say, okay, we're going to do a groundbreaking here, and that means all the people now have, the next 2 weeks, so we can give the contractor the date to start the work and move the people out.
So are you telling me all those new buildings will be demolished for that project?
No, not the finance and the building.
Oh, okay.
We're talking about the kiosk buildings that are here. There's also another temporary building that's at the back, all part of the old structure, but those are the only buildings. And the finance building here, that's another new building that is going to remain with the mental unit. But we're also going to need a staging area. So as you can imagine, it's a large structure. So there's a construction zone and then a staging area. And then behind that is the water tank project. So what we're doing is we're starting to move offices, but I mean, I want to make the public know and rest assured, all services are going to be intact. It's not like we're moving services from here to another place and then that's the place you're going to get that service from and not from the other. We're trying to make sure that wherever we go with the office spaces is one that doesn't immediately need to be on site, but also that there's representation of all the departments to remain on site.
I've seen a lot of former CEOs that were sitting on that chair. They look pressure all the time. And you look stress-free, man. What's the secret?
Oh, my grandma used to say, "Oh God, we're not fighting no feet." I thought, "Fight God, o ka fight God, o ka fulfill go for But no, I think there's an old saying is really just stay in your lane, but also just pick and choose, right? And my new administration is back to the basics. Go back, do the little things right? Keep the staff happy, engaged, make sure that payroll goes through, start to deliver healthcare services, clean environments, then we can start to build. And secondary to that is just the team. This is a team effort, and I'm very thankful that there's a lot of individuals out there that were willing to come to LBJ, and whatever happens is we got the support from the government, we've got the support from our board of directors. We're also starting to build a good team, and for once in a long time with the ARPA money, we actually have the funds to deliver this. So,
and hopefully Governor Pula will appoint 2 new board members to help with the work.
Yeah, and I think the fono, I'm not sure the date for the fono, it's July, I don't know if you know. But, I believe that during that confirmation round is probably when we're going to go through it, and the governor is all about transparency, but also selection, and I applaud that. Sometimes you got to really take the time to figure out who's the specific candidates, and the lieutenant governor as well. So I'm hoping within the next month or so we should get some candidates.
Wa tatau no usi uyo tatau no. Sau no ngai le ngana sa mo e whakatei fo ile tu no mai mo mai.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hape fo ile le ngana pertania.
Yeah. Whakainga mo mora pangoa no whionga i o le taimi e no foi ma mori le anganga whaftai i tangasa tato atu nuu a wā le anganga whaamo mua ngei matanga ruenga i o le tato e ngā rue le hawa whatawhata Februani ia male tapua inga fo ia wā i tato atu nuu o le ngō ruenga e whainga tā isika ni ai nema whainga mai ane mea a whapea le sosoangi ma tapua i mai e la tunu ai mai se la wa whaftai ta i tato tunu i lava no sai o tato uma na tausa airi suinga a wā se soifua manui o tato atunu i ora matanga lea wā matanga soro maa li atua ia o le lava o le sai mo tapua inga ai ai fo i singa fase a po ia savani mai e fai skako karoa o ka ko ie ka ko ngarbu whakasi e ro le whanmai a se toa tasi o le whanmai a tātou ia e lise e le mwhainga i manguia le whanmai a tātou a le whaongama ma whainga nuenga whaatasi a e mori lava rea nganga whaftai tātou atu nuu a wāre sosoangi mai ia whamaro fo ia le anganga rofa e tele fo ia tangata o rolo tangoa ta ua i mata aupu ese ia ai e tele fo ia tangata tato atu e wala au mai pe tua au i tai e
whamaro
whamaro maro tu fo ia tu. Faftai na ai. Tato maro ro fatasi. Ei mauia ai maru soifua maru roinga o tato tangata. Ai faftai na. I want to thank you so much for this. I'm not usually on the podcasts or I'm used to traditional media, but I did want to take this time to thank the people of American Samoa for your support, most of all your patience. I mentioned before that, you know, we all wanted some form of change or some form of difference, and I feel that we're starting to turn the tide. We're starting somewhere. It's not going to be perfect. No one's ever going to be perfect. It's not going to be ideal, but it's going to be something that leads to what we deserve. So I want to thank you for the support. I also thank you for the criticism. I also thank you for these issues, because there's so many things that on a day-to-day basis that I'm dealing with. But please, if there are issues, come have a conversation with me. Come in, go through the process, and, you know, be part of the solution. I need the community to come with me with problems, and we can all be part of the solution. It's not my hospital, it's not the doctor's hospital, it's our hospital, and there's only one. So thank you for your support. Please don't hesitate to contact me and come in, and please just be patient. There's a lot of things that the new government administration is working towards. There's a lot of things that we're trying to do. It just takes a little bit of patience and support, and we'll get there.
Thank you very much, Kavanesi, for the time, and thank you for allowing us to come and chat with you.
I appreciate the time.
O le taleni nei o taina o le ukulele, taina o le kitara, ma mea whaili whapena. Wa avea fo'i o se taleni o tautau wai le tele o tama whanau wa Samoa. I le nei e fiafi e whai watu tātou Paul Kalame, i se tasi nei o alom whanau o Samoa, le tamai tai o lona suafa atoa o Pelestene, tau whawai, tau tūloa, Fredham, ia po lona ingoa leolo o tau vai nei, o lona suafa o Tennessee Blue. O le tamaitai Tennessee Blue o lo avea nei ma numeratasi, o lo o numeratasi, currently first in their group. O lo no winga e ke le kori se o lo tau vai. Ma o lo tau va i le avea i le tau vanga le nei o le America's Next Top Hitmaker. O le nei tau vanga o lo whaanga solo i le United States. Ma o lo o tau va aila tamaitai nei, se fulu mo le ono tau sanga o lona matua. Mai e talo sanga ina wa mai man masiona tina, malona ainga. E talo sanga ina sa moiso se tafalolangi. Ina ia avatu lau tō langolango. I le mori mawatu temi nei, leo te lua se fulu i tūlā, se fulu iwa minute, se fulu fitu se kone o lo tutoe, o na tāpuni e loa lea o le voting process in temi nei. A o le mea mauti noa lama, o le tamaitai nei, o lo avea o se ave fua a Samoa. Ma Amerika Samoa, o na tupuanga, e mai Samoa tua oi, whapea fo i ma Amerika Samoa. Na maua sawa no le por kalamane tala tau i tala no ai, ma le tina o te mai taile nei, ma o se wa inga lea, i lea sa unoanga.
Ka lo palava, lo suafo sa tau po le ngalo moe mo sa tia tu le iku. Lo ngoa ka fongoa o pebi lo umala o ainga, o lo ngapa e sa mai kukuila. O manua, makukuila, masamo sisifo ya masawai. O lo ngapa a maka mai mangua o kau ya masaku ya anga o lo senga. Ako ya mamangua inga i kukuile pango ya kamanga ki ngao lo kama lo kinga. O sa si kupe asu enga si tupe. Ako kama lo kama o feso alo ka isi mai pangsa. Ako lesi o piko fo isau mai nga i shark and turtle vai ngaleo au lai mo umu ya malesi piko au ngu ya malesi fo piko mai au mo lomo ya lo ngafai nga i samo sifo ya o polo pai li to sulu peko mai ka osaka puala kama ele mai paleolo o ka mausi o peko e sa mai fo ala lo fale lima o kongsi teko. Ai ka mau kinga ka mau kinga. Isa mai palipa mai ai ngo ali lo o le ali a palipa. Ya le ki pangale au afakasi ya ai nga o sa o ngapa nga. Ya mangua. Ya o ka ule si piko mai ofu. Ya ma olosenga. Ya mangua. Ya o ka Samoa. O lo kamba kenge ngale se fulu ngo kausanga o place tene tau wa ita o tilo freno known as Tennessee Blue ya mango foi ka ko Samoa sa pai ka ko fangau ku le ka fangau mawel manguia ya lo fisila ku ngaka ka ko ainga masamo umakele ya vote ya Tennessee Blue once a day every day mele manguia Samoa wal mangayo wo wai ka mai Samoa ka alo fo pa ka alo so se ka lo nga ole manguia le Samoa ma ko fa Samoa mo mole akua ya bawanga lo ka fa ko ai manguia Samoa o Samoa man ko foi o Samoa ngole lo fo le Samoa ya ko nga mo go Samoa go ya manguia laso ya paso ifua
Na mawhai o na mātou fsota i at fo i le studio o lo te pena aile te mai taile nei o Tennessee Blue. Leo lo numera tasi le pālutanga David nei i le tauwanga o le America's Next Top Hitmaker. O le saunanga nei te mai tai i na uafsirigia e le tala le taui i le tala noanga i le tae au an leila.
Tali Le Falema'I is plus 10 here, also known as Tennessee Blue. I want to share some of my experiences I had in the last year playing guitar. I got to play at the 2 Hawaiian Slack Key festivals in Maui and Kona, which was a huge experience that I was blessed to have, knowing that my family came from there. It was very special. In a few months, I will be playing at the Atlantic Festival in New York in October, which is very cool. And I would hope to return back to New York for the Global Citizen and to win, and I would love for my people to support me at the Global Citizen and win this, because I would love to show other young Polynesian musicians that you can become something and to be your own unique musician. And this is Tennessee, and I would love for my people to vote for me and show some love and help me win this, because it would be a blessing and a dream to win this. And thank you so much. Signing out, Tennessee Blue.
Amerika Samoa o le whaai unga le nā o le tātou polkalame tala ta ui mō le nei aso. Tuli tau mai, nisi o tātou whaatala noanga e winga i le mata upu lava nei le Falema'I po le mautanga ngase i whanga alu. I nisi na mawhai o na whaasoa mai, ma o lo tau mwhai foi e sa i lia pēr whina ngalo o le board e to tolu sui o lo o iai i le taiminei. O lau tau ona nei tau pa utau le ave tolu ono, whaafatai le mai mō le tala le tau i le nei vai aso. Tau whaasoi.